Good morning, everyone. Let's start our class with some prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Bhavaswaha, Tatsavitra Varenayam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Asto Ma Satgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, मृत्युर्मा अमृतम गम्य ओम सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सवीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ओम शांति 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 ओम. Let's open our Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. We are on page number 11 on this book, and this is the verse number 4. And these verses, as you can see, they are not a poetry, they are prose. Okay. So let me just recite this, and then and the English meanings, you already got it in your book. But if you need to know anything more than that, please, you can always ask. Sa akamyat me dvityaha atma jayetiti Ashnaya mrityu manasah vacham mithunam sambhavat yatretah asit svansarah abhavat tatah pura svansarah nah as tam yavan svansarah etavantam kalam sa abhivibha etavatah kalasya parastat tam asrijat jatam tam abhivyadat Sa bhan akrot ev abhavat. So this is that long verse which you see in your, so this is a verse number 4 in the section number 2 of this great Upanishad. So we saw in the last verse, he talked about the death because he's talking about the creation. So death is part of the creation. So he says he, the death, desired. Let me have a second body. Having thus desired, he became the union of speech with the mind. The seed that was there became Samutsar. Samutsar means the year. Prior to him, there had been no year. He, the death, reared him for as long as a year. After this period, he created him. When he was born, he, the death, opened his mouth to devour him. He, now that babe, made a sound. Which sound he uttered? Bhan. That sound indeed became speech. So after having manifested himself as the first organism in the cosmic egg, and what is a cosmic egg we learned? Hiranyagarbha. The death thought of or desired for his second body, self. In the previous verses, we saw his first body was Viraj. But containing within himself, there was a whole organism of mundane creation. So everything was in there. So the second self which he desired for came to his mind as Vak, speech. Vak is the power or medium of expression, as we all know. Vak. It is quite natural that what one thinks, one expresses. This is the correlation of thinking and expressing. And this is what this Rishi is establishing in this mantra. He thought, then he spoke. We all know speech is, what is speech? Speech is a thought expressed. Okay? No form of knowledge can find expression without the medium of speech. Speech reproduces the thought in the form of sound vibrations. If there were no speech, how could we express ourselves? So this is what this Rishi is establishing here. The fact that soon after creating the Viraj, the cosmic organism, Death thought by virtue of his mind to create speech. Through that speech, he'll be able to express or know the existence. Speech. Because we'll see that later on. He will say that knowledge has the support of the speech. We'll see that in future verses. What we speak is the grossest reproduction of knowledge. Because when knowledge springs up in our mind, there are certain subtle vibrations. They form a group. These subtle vibrations in a group express the subject of knowledge. See, it happens in us so automatically that we don't pay attention to it. But over here in these mantras, this Rishi is really expressing it in detail, what really happens. When this expression takes place through the medium of sound, which we call speech, so that's why he says that speech presupposes a thought, a knowledge. Because otherwise, knowledge can never find its expression in any form. We can know all we want to, but if we don't know how to express it, it has no value. So this is what speech is. So if there were no speech, neither right nor wrong, neither good or bad, neither pleasant nor unpleasant would be known. Right? We all experience that. Somebody gives something to us, whether to eat or whether to hold. Through speech, we can tell them whether we like it or not, or whether we are thankful or not. In fact, this is said in Chandogya Upanishad also. Speech is the first conception of knowledge. That's what this Rishi is telling us. And the first expression of thought. Because before speech, before they became dense, thoughts must have been in infinite in nature. Because that's what the Hiranyagarbha is. The cosmic thoughts, cosmic intelligence, but in the form of that egg. So it was only speech which gave them a definite shape, the form of knowledge. So he, the death, brought about the union of speech with the mind. He created speech which reproduced his mind in the form of knowledge. And what is that knowledge? Our Sanatan Dharma says that knowledge is the Vedas. That is the knowledge he's talking about. Because those Vedas are the source of all secular knowledge also. The first expression of Hiranyagarbha is in the Vedas. And the first sound in creation, the first kind of knowledge. So the cosmic mind, after having caused union with speech, and after having reflected upon the Vedas, the knowledge, conceived division in eternity. Before this, there was no division of time. So this division happened because he reflected upon the past through his mind. Because how do we know that this is past? Who's saying it? Our mind is saying it. Past. And then there was an effect in the speech. So mind thought of it and speech verbalized it. So the reflection on past gave birth to the conception of the time factor. See, just like a reflection on the ether, the space. See, the conception of the space comes from the ether, the Akash Tattva. So time factor naturally involves in it three divisions: past, present, and future. We are all familiar with it. So the seed of creation was there in that embryo. And what is that embryo? The Viraj, which we learned in the previous verses. First, it was in a latent state, awaiting the completion of duration. When the egg was broken, the first embodied soul would spring up. Then he says he was waiting so long as a period which was equivalent to 1 hour, 1 year. Hour. Earth's 1 year. It is this intermediate duration of time which is well known by all of us. A year. And now it was the time for the Viraj to come out of the egg. So creation took place and the Viraj was born, who was the first in the embodied mundane creation. So that's why he said that the baby is born now. So this newborn baby is a universe in a miniature. And it sprang out of death. We all know that every kind of life presupposes death as its cause. Death causes life to manifest. The whole of creation owes its origin to death. Even though as human beings, we are very afraid of death. But if there's no death, there won't be a creation. Any old bridge needs to be taken down to create a new one. Death now waited to swallow the newborn baby. That's what this Upanishad is saying. But then the question arises, why did it want to eat its own offspring? And the reply is very simple, but it's very philosophical. Life is born for death. No sooner does one come into manifestation, faces death, which always stands before him. That's why they say anybody who's born, anything which is born, will die definitely. Creation and end of creation, which is called destruction, is part of the whole cycle. So life which has followed death is nothing in the vast span of eternity. Behold the life in the universe from the viewpoint of this seer who is coming up with these mantras. Okay, not our own view of death which we are afraid of. Don't we always say that it's like a jaws of death are always there? The endless universes which are born of time, limited by space and causation, are fleeing every second towards death. I'm sure you all have seen those episodes of Mahabharata. That Virat Purush, what do we see in there? Creation on one hand is happening, and then the death is also happening. It's coming out of Virat Purush, going back into Virat Purush. The infinite universes. There is nothing whatsoever in this universe which does not meet with death. Remember that. For the universe is ever subjected to time, which is called Kal. Lord Krishna said that. I am this Kal right now. Because Arjuna wanted to know, what are you showing me? I'm afraid. But he says, I am Kal also. Which never survives the next second, but passes away instantaneously. So time is the ruling factor of all beings. So universe is divided into these infinitesimal fractions of time. So the so-called span of universe life is nothing before infinity. Because it is also bound by the death. Death will devour it. Even though we call it infinite, but it will be devoured. So this wise seer of this Upanishad has foreseen the ultimate end of life. And that's why he's describing it very graphically for us. He says that the newborn baby faced death who was intent on devouring it as soon as it was born. This is what he's telling us. And continuing this graphic description, he says that the baby cried in terror, as every one of us would do when death approaches. There's a fear of death. What did Rishi Patanjali call this fear? Abhinivesh, fear of death. He said, even the wise have this fear. And this is what this Rishi is telling us. Cried. And this also suggests that the worlds were born with a terrorized complex. with this innate and natural fear for death. So it's not just a poetic fancy, but a glaring truth, because everyone is afraid of death. So terribly frightened by the presence of death, whom he had never seen before, but whose fear was in him due to the fact of primal ignorance, avidya. As long as we don't know who we are, we will be afraid. That is the primal ignorance. But once we know who we are, in essence, then there's no fear. So that's why most of us are afraid, because we don't know who we are. And that's why he said that baby produced that sound, bhan. And this bhan was the first manifestation of speech as sound. And we see that sound when the babies are born. Our human babies are born too. What is the first sound? The cry. Bhan. It is called vak. Vak is that which is spoken. So whatever sound is there, it is speech. Just speech. So now you can see that how deep this philosophy is, which is this Rishi is telling us, bringing our awareness to it. So he desired me, a second baby be born to me. He, death or hunger, caused the union of speech, the Vedas with the mind. The seed that was in that union became the year. Never was there any year before him. He, the death, nourished the fetus in the cosmic egg for as long as a year, and after that period, produced him. He opened his mouth to swallow the baby as he was born. The baby cried, Bhan. It was this that became speech. I hope it is a little clearer or clearer for all of us. Let's look at one more mantra. So this is mantra number 5. Sa ekshat yadi ve imam abhisansate kanishaha annam krishye iti sa taya vachaha ten atmanaha yat kimcha idam richa yanjushihi samani chandasi yagyan praja pashun idam sarvam asrijat sa yat yat ev asrijat tat tat atum adhiniyat sarvam ve ati iti tat adite aditvam ya adite etat aditvam evam ved etasya sarvasya ata bhavati sarvam asya annam bhavati. So verse number 5. He thought, so again, who is thinking? The death. He thought, verily, if I kill him means the newborn baby, I shall make little food. Thus, on this reflection, he, death, by that speech and by that mind, created all this. Whatever there is existing here, the Rig Ved, the Yajur Ved, the Sam Ved, the meters, sacrifices, men and animals. Whatever he thus created, all that he resolved to eat. because death verily eats all. Therefore, Aditi is so called. He who thus knows how Aditi came to have this name, he who knows him in his nature as Aditi, he becomes the eater of all this. Everything becomes his food. We have seen how he manifested himself as time and space. In this mantra, now, the creation of the gross universe is described. Because after time and space, this grosser world, the universe which we see, it got manifested too. So after having resolved to kill the little baby, he, the death, thought that it would be unwise to kill him now, because he said it's a little food. He would be making very little food. It's not enough. So creation had just sprung up. At that point, there were neither animals nor men, nothing whatsoever except life, which had just manifested in the form of that baby, or the form of Viraj. But that too, first thought came to the death, I want to devour it. But then second thought was, it would be too little for him. How can the all devastating death be satisfied with a meager quantity of food? Moreover, Viraj represents food and the producer of food also. If the producer of food itself is eaten up, then there will be no more production of food to eat. So death abstained or desisted himself from killing the firstborn. He said, it's so little, I will not kill it right now. And at the same time, with the help of speech and mind, and through their union, created all that which exists here. So created more. So with the united operation of speech, that means the knowledge, and mind, which is called a willpower, and in Sanskrit it's called Gyan and Icha. So there has to be a combination of both. The Icha has to be there, the knowledge has to be there too. So with the combination of Gyan and Icha combined, he manifested himself as the three Vedas: Rig Ved, Yajur Ved, Samved. And then he says in this mantra, the meters also. There are 7 meters. We are very much familiar with the Gayatri meter, but there are other meters too. Gayatri is just one of them. Ushnik, Anushtup. When we were studying the Vedic mantras in that little book, Guruji wrote that which meter this mantra is written. There is a Jagati we are familiar with. That's a meter. Okay. So Brihati, that is a meter too. So there are several meters. So this is what he's talking about over here. So all those verses are written. Even other scriptures also, not just the Vedas alone, they are composed and sung. And then he created the sacrifices, that means the yajnas also. Men and animals also. And we have already seen that the death projected Viraj through the union of speech with the mind. That union of the mind with speech was then in an unmanifested state. But over here in this verse, he is giving reference to the manifestation of the already existing Vedas. In the beginning, the knowledge too was not in the manifested form. See, when everything goes into unmanifestation after the Pralya, Vedas go into unmanifestation too. But they got to come back into that manifestation form, because it was remaining unexpressed for the want of a medium. It was only an idea in the mind. The mind was able to conceive knowledge, but it could not give the expression to any form. But when the knowledge, the Gyan Shakti, came to be expressed through the medium or the channel of speech in the gross universe, then life found ample scope for spontaneous evolution and expression. Okay, so those are like a seeds for this tree of manifestation which we see, which we recognize. So now the knowledge expressed itself in the form of Vedas, meters, and yagyas. And these in the scheme of creation were further expressed, and in course of time, in a still grosser form, by men who possess the knowledge, they expressed it and utilized it. See, even today, some can express, some pay attention to it, but most don't. So this development in the universal scheme must have taken a very long time. And perhaps it was much later when a human being sang the Vedas in different meters and started doing the yagyas for his own sake. So that's why they say it should not be argued that he created Vedas, etc., to be sung, or the sacrifices to be performed. Because if we just think only in a limited sense, then we are really losing sight of these mantras. So what exactly is this Upanishad teaching us? That everything, whether animate or inanimate, sentient or insentient, movable or immovable, big or small, was created by him alone. And him means the Ishwar. Everything, whether it's a mountain or a tree, devta or a human being, dog or a reptile, everything. Creation should not be ascribed to any other being. It is he, the creator, in whom all this exists and gets dissolved at the end. It's just like all the waves come out of the ocean and then go back into the ocean. So in a sense, they are all water. Big waves, small waves, bubbles, froth. Everything is just a water. So the fact of creation is a sort of his self-expression, which finds an interesting explanation and description in the mystic-minded sages. So these sages, they can see it. Then they expressed it in these beautiful, poetic, or mystic way. So this process of his self-expression is like a long chain, which, though it contains in it diverse species or links, is one in essence. So that's why we say we are all one. So this mantra states that whatever he projected, he was intent on eating. And it may be explained in this way, that every object which is manifested and has name and form is bound to be victimized by death. We see that the plants are born, they go back, right? Anything which is born has an end. So it is sure to perish. It is limited by time, space, and causation, as we say it. It might survive the blows of time for a good number of years, but in the end, it has to die. Nothing that is born can be eternal. That's why they say that Atma, the soul, is not born. Aja, it's not born. That's why it will never die. And that's what who we are. Creation as a whole is short-lived. Everything in it is pre-resolved to be eaten away by death. So it is natural that death must have intended to subject Viraj to his inevitable law. And who is death? Because we are talking about death so much. Once again, the Shruti follows the same course of describing death and identifies him with Aditi in this mantra, whom the Rig Veda declares to be everything in this universe. See, Rig Veda is the first Veda, Rig Veda. Over there, a lot of mantras for Aditi. Aditi is heaven, it says. Aditi is sky. Aditi is the mother and he is the father. That's how the mantra goes. So how did death come to have this name Aditi? Because death is all-consuming, all-enveloping, and animating the whole being of creation. So as we just saw in the preceding paragraph, Aditi is heaven, sky, mother, father, etc. So eminent in the whole being of creation. So because of this common function of animation and eminence, the death is identified with the Aditi of the Rig Veda. So that's another name for death, Aditi. Death possesses this characteristic, and he came to have this name Aditi, which this text is referring to, Aditi. And one who knows that death is Aditi, because it consumes all, becomes the eater of all. He becomes identified with everything. One who knows that there is one all-providing factor in the entire cosmos really becomes free from the clutches of birth and death. And you know, that is our goal, ultimate goal of life as a human being, to become free of the clutches of birth and death. So that's why these mantras metaphorically putting this fact by saying that he becomes the eater of all this, all names and forms. That means becomes one with that higher power. To such a person who feels himself identified with everything, everything becomes his food. See, this is the union. This is the yoga. Instead of thinking that I am so small, so insignificant, by uniting yourself with that higher power, you become all. Again, going to that example, one drop of water. When it merges into the ocean, what happens? We don't call it a drop of water, we call it an ocean. This is what happens to such a person who identifies with everything. Everything becomes his food. This is called a cosmic vision, by which his self becomes eminent in every speck of this vast creation. You start seeing oneness in the clouds also, in the sun also, in the moon also. Not just in your body parts, not just in your family members, not just with your countrymen, with every speck. So all that others enjoy becomes his enjoyment. Don't we feel that as mothers, fathers? When our children enjoy, that becomes our enjoyment because we feel the oneness. Their pain becomes our pain, their enjoyment becomes our enjoyment. This is what happens to this yogi. All that others enjoy becomes his enjoyment, and all that others eat becomes his food. That's why this mantra says everything becomes his food. This is the realization of oneness. Oneness. And this is what the Vedas, through these complicated looking verses, the seers are telling us. But this is the essence of it. So let's stop it here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.